Solomon Bird.
Solomon Burke, it
What
says.
what year was it?
Uh,
That song, Don't Give Up on Me, Baby.
That's it. That's
That
it.
one, yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song.
All right, you guys are live on YouTube.
Good
So, good morning.
good morning, Lynn. Good morning, Karen. Good morning, Mickey, Dove, Regis, and anyone listening. Nice to be here with all of you. And we are studying forgiveness in Jesus, the meeting place of A Course in Miracles and Christianity. And Karen, would you like to pray us in?
I'd love to pray us in. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Settle in, take a breath. Relax the mind. And remember, I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent Him who sent me. I don't have to worry about what to say or what to do because He who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever He wishes, knowing that He goes there with me. I will be healed as I let Him teach me to heal. Amen.
Amen. So, Karen, do you have that? You all, because I wasn't at the last class really. Uh, did you guys end it where it says special hate relationships in the book?
Yes, we'll be starting special hate relationships today.
Okay. Did you want me to start reading that?
I would love for you to start reading.
Okay, I'll start reading that. Uh, Special hate relationships. In the special hate relationships, the responsibility for one's own misery and unhappiness is shifted to another. Under the ego's guidance, we are taught to say, quote, "It is not I who am guilty or the cause of my unhappy situation, but you who have done these terrible things to me," end quote. And if orientation is thus established, if only my parents had been different, if only my spouse were more understanding, if only the government or church were more liberal or conservative, if only something outside myself were changed, then I would be happy. This ego tactic nicely serves its goal of shifting the problem to where it can never be resolved outside of us. As the workbook states, the ego's plan for salvation centers around holding grievances. It maintains that if someone else spoke or acted differently, if some external circumstance or event were changed, you would be saved. Thus, the source of salvation is constantly perceived as outside yourself. Each grievance you hold is a declaration and an assertion in which you believe that says, quote, "If this were different, I would be saved," end quote. And that's from the workbook 71 2 1 through 4. And, this reminds me of a very important lesson: love holds no grievances. And actually, Karen, I think we were just talking about Tara Singh's book, and that's on love holds no grievances, the ending of attack. And so, what Ken's talking about here in this paragraph is that the ego wants you to look at everything except yourself. So it's kind of like the saying on your hand, you have one finger pointing at somebody else, but there's four fingers when you do that, pointing back at yourself. And it's uh, the right, the ego doesn't want you to look within. And that would be to go to the decision maker, because you are the decision maker, and ask for help so that you can perceive this situation differently. And that would be through the Holy Spirit and taking Jesus's hand, because it's a process and it's a gentle, slow process. So would anyone else like to speak on this paragraph here about the ego's plan for salvation centers around holding grievances? I see Karen's hand is up, so Karen, please go ahead.
Well, first of all, I love that you shared about lesson 68, love holds no grievances. And that is such a beautiful lesson. And, you know, he says in this first paragraph that to hold a grievance is to forget who you are. To hold a grievance is to see yourself as a body. To hold a grievance is to let the ego rule your mind and to condemn the body to death. So perhaps you do not yet fully realize just what holding grievances does to your mind. So this is, I think this is really huge. This whole paragraph is perfectly aligned with that lesson and with the lesson that Ken shared, that the ego's plan for salvation centers around holding grievances. And, you know, I think for me, this is one of the biggest things, the biggest and hugest, even though there's no hierarchy, this was big. This was a big thing for me, always blaming the outside condition and learning to take responsibility from practicing forgiveness and Course in Miracles, and also learning by my mistakes and learning that there is nothing outside of me. And true forgiveness, the true forgiveness that I found in my really bad experiences that I learned my biggest lessons from, were seeing the part I played in it, that it wasn't the other person's fault. It was never the other person's fault, you know? And this is what I love about this course. And this paragraph, the special hate relationship, in the special hate relationship, the responsibility for one's own misery and happiness is shifted to another. So under the ego's guidance, we're taught to say that you have done this to me. It's your fault. If only. And it starts with the parents. It starts with, well, if my mom would have done this, if my dad would have done that. And taking responsibility is such a freedom. And I've learned how to handle this in my situations with my special relationships, because my daughter used to, you know, for a pretty fairly long time, for years, throw things in my face that if only line. And I put up with it for quite a bit of years because I felt guilty, a lot of guilt. And then once I started practicing forgiveness, I just said to her, look, you know, this has got to stop. You're an adult now, and now it's time for you to take responsibility for yourself. No matter what happened in life, we have to learn. We can't blame anyone. When we're children, of course, it's difficult, it's hard. We can't help what happens when we're little. Things happen. But when we grow up, we learn that we can make another choice. It's always about going back to choose again. And the ego is very, very vicious and suspicious, and it wants to make you feel guilty. That's one of the ego's, I don't know what the word I want, but one of the ego's main uh, defenses is to make someone feel guilty. And that's where the anger comes from. Anger really is never justified because we just want to make the other one feel guilty and make them believe it's their fault so we don't have to take responsibility. So I think this is a huge paragraph. And I'm very grateful. And also, it also reminds me of, just came to my mind, where Ken used to always say, the ego's twofold purpose is I exist and it's not my fault. That is definitely what the ego believes and wants to keep that separation going by continually believing that it's not my fault. So I don't have to take responsibility. So I just love this paragraph. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. That's so true. That's what the ego wants. And I mean, and we have to remember that it's an outside picture of an inward condition. And the ego doesn't want you to look inward. It wants you to look at what's been projected outward and not to look within. And I think, you know, that's lesson 68. Besides, I can see peace instead of this, and I am never upset for, you know, I'm never upset for the reason I think. And love holds no grievances is one of the most important lessons of the course. I also feel that, you know, a lot of marriages could could be saved, could be helped if they could really work on these principles, those three principles, and that love holds no grievances, and also relationships between parent and children, or like Ken says here, the government, anything. And it's the ending of attack. That's what love holds no grievances is. It's the ending of attack, and this world was made as an attack. So it's such an important lesson. It's such an important lesson, and thank you for your sharing. Would anyone else like to comment on this before we move on to the next?
No, I just want to piggyback off of what you just shared, which I agree with lesson 5 and lesson 34, which also Ken introduced me to a long time ago. That is, it's it's actually a practice that actually works. It actually works when I'm believing that there's something outside of me that is the cause. When I say to myself, I am never upset for the reason I think. Lesson 5, I am not upset because of whatever I think it is. And I'm kind of taking responsibility at that point, because I'm making a decision to choose again. I'm making that decision to see that it's my thoughts about the situation. It's not the situation. It's my thoughts about the situation and the meaning that I'm giving it. And then I can say, I could see peace instead of this. I have another choice to make. I don't have to allow this to take my peace away. So that they're two huge, those lessons are so helpful. And I think anybody who studies Ken knows that how great those two lessons are and how helpful they are. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, thank you, Karen, for your sharing. That's yeah, those lessons are a mainstay in my life, and I really appreciate Ken, you know, and in his talk on the series, the Death and Dying series, he brings that up. That those two lessons uh, are you don't really need to practice any of the other of the workbook if you've got those lessons down and you bring those lessons into application in your life every day. But you know, I really love holds no grievances too. That's a big one for me. Lesson 68. So I don't see any other hands, and I'll go ahead and read the next paragraph if you'd like, or if you want to read it. But I don't mind.
No, you can keep reading. Thanks.
Okay. Once the person or situation has been selected who meets the requirements of the projection, it becomes imperative to demonstrate to ourselves and others that this is the, quote, guilty one, end quote. This is done through our anger, which is an attempt to justify the projection of our guilt. Anger always involves projection of separation, which must ultimately be accepted as one's own responsibility rather than being blamed on others. Anger cannot occur unless you believe that you have been attacked, that your attack is justified in return, and that you are in no way responsible for it. And that's from the text in the Course 6, 1, 2 through 3. And so anger always, Ken says here, anger always in the Course, it says, involves projection of separation. And it's, you know, being blamed on somebody else. So it's that projection, not looking inward, and that, you know, you're projecting that separation outward, and you're blaming somebody else or a situation. And it's a classroom. So you know, we need to step back and be the decision maker and ask for help so that we can perceive this differently. And that's really the only way out of it is to step back. And, I love the mindfulness training of the dolphin, where you think of the dolphin and you take the breath, and how the dolphin in mindfulness training, it comes out of the water and it takes a breath, and then it goes under the water, and while it's under the water, it it thinks, it uses its mind. So that could be going to the decision maker who you really are, and then it comes out of the water and it helps others. It's helped many lost sailors at sea and fishermen. And so that's part of mindfulness training, is that dolphin and taking that breath, and that's stepping back. So would anyone else like to write? And Dove wrote in the chat, just breathe. And I know this, which I tell many people is, when you're upset or you're angry, are you breathing from your chest area, or are you breathing lower from your diaphragm, more in the abdominal area? That's that mindfulness. And that starts bringing you back. It starts like calming you down when you notice your breath, and you're stepping back and you're listening at that point. So would anyone like to comment on this, on anger? Karen, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you for that mindfulness reminder with the dolphin practice. And also with the breathing, and sometimes just putting your hand on your heart and feeling your heartbeat while you're doing that can keep me centered. Um, and This is also another big one for me. And in the course, such a big teaching that, it's the projection that, we're projecting our guilt onto someone else because we don't want to take responsibility. And I love that the particular paragraph Ken chose in chapter 6, that anger always involves projection of separation, which must ultimately be accepted as one's own responsibility rather than being blamed on others. Anger cannot occur unless you believe that you have been attacked and your attack is justified in return, and that you are in no way responsible for it. So it always starts with that belief. It's that belief that I have been attacked. I'm making the error real. I am believing that someone has, or something, or someone outside of me has an effect on me, and I'm allowing it to disturb my peace. That's making the error real. And it's not that we're not supposed to get angry. And that's something that I also was a little confused at first in the course. When I first read anger is never justified, and I'm like, what do you mean anger is never justified? Because anger was one of my biggest character defects I worked on in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I still work on it today. And I thought, wow, and so I started learning more and reading more about the course, that it's not that we're not to get angry, it's that we're to not justify it by blaming anything else on our anger. The anger is a decision. Everything in this course is a decision. We're either choosing one of two thought systems every moment of every day. I'm choosing whether I'm going to believe in the ego thought system of guilt or the Holy Spirit thought system of forgiveness. So, as Dove shares a lot, especially recently, the seek and do not find mentality of the ego. I'm going to seek outside of myself and I will never find. It's always looking within. Now, what am I angry about? Must have chosen wrongly because I'm not at peace, and I can choose again. It's never the outside picture. And this is over and over and over repeated in the course for a reason, because it's so easy to forget and so easy to believe and to have that temptation to believe. As lesson 17 says, it's that temptation to believe that it's the other way around, that temptation to believe that the cause is outside of my mind. And this is a moment to moment practice. So I really appreciate the way the repetition in the course that we're continually reminded. So thanks.
Thank you, Karen, for that on anger. Yes, it's beautiful, and I really do appreciate too the repetition in the course. Dove has written in the chat, love holds no grievances. Big hack. Just breathe. Breathe in acceptance. Breathe out resistance. Resistance equal grievances. Acceptance is our superpower. And then Dove brought up lesson 74 in the Course in Miracles. There is no will but God's. And that's also to what we were talking about before we came live on air about don't give up on me. You know, God never gives up on us. So no matter what, he's always there. So I love that Dove brought up lesson 74. There is no will but God's. And you know, as far as anger goes too, it's also releasing judgment, because we don't know what another person's or atonement path is or situation. So we can't judge it. And so anger always involves judgment on some level of form. So we have to release that judgment also along with the anger of what's been projected. So thank you. So would anyone else like to
Had his
to
hand.
share?
Yeah, just to add to that, you know, it's the course says it's either judgment or vision. You can't have both. So it's always going back to that choice in the mind. You know, it's either judgment or vision. It's either seeing through the body's eyes or seeing through the eyes of Christ. You can't have both. And it's always noticing, you know, when I am, because when it happens, I notice it, and I can always tell by the way I feel. You know, I don't like the judgments. I don't like the feeling I get. I would rather be at peace, you know, and that's the motivation the course talks about. It's a motivation, and the cost of sin is death. And death is the belief that I could be separate from God, and that is the guilt. The guilt stems from the belief that I could be separate from God, and that's why it's, you know, forgetting who I am, holding grievances. I have forgotten who I am. And then he also tells us in lesson, or actually in chapter 10, section 2, that all attack is self-attack. It stems from a decision to forget who you are. So it's always forgetting the truth of who I am as God created me and believing in what the ego thoughts are telling me. And it's a definite moment-to-moment practice that I continually love to be reminded. That's all.
Regis had his hand up.
Yes, Dove had his hand up too.
Dove.
So I don't know who goes
Regis.
first, but Dove or Regis, please go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning. Thanks, Dove and Lynn. I was just trying to get in behind Karen when she was talking about anger, and the big takeaway for me was just taking responsibility. And you reminded me of a conversation Tracy and I was just sitting here having some days ago, and I started to say, you know, I was telling her how, you know, we say, oh, you made me mad, or, you know, you made me angry. And I was saying, in truth, I said, we say that that's just habitual, how we was raised. But in truth, nobody can make us mad. We chose to be angry. We chose to be mad. We made a judgment on the decision that what you said or what you did, I want to be angry about it. And I told her, you know, uh, I used to love to hear the quote, uh, if truth is true, it's true in every situation, and it's true all the time. So I said, and if you look at it, you can realize, okay, I can get up, I can be a little brash, or and I'm saying that in a judgmental way. You can say, I'm being brash, I'm being short, I'm being whatever. I said, but a person that don't want to be angry, they'll just say, "Oh, Regis, you must got up on the wrong side of the bed. Ha ha ha." You know, or another person can see, "You're not going to talk to me that way. And why are you being ugly?" So if truth is true, then we have to accept the responsibility when we say, "Oh, you made me angry. You made me mad, or this made me mad." No, I chose to be mad because other people were in the same spot, heard the same thing, saw the same thing, and they didn't choose to be angry. You know, they chose to be peace. They chose peace. They chose love. They saw a call for love and they answered with love. you know it's just what Karen was saying. We just come to a place where we are willing to just take responsibility. If I'm mad, I've been had. you know and I take responsibility, not to shift that blame or project it on anybody else. And that's the quickest path back to peace, when we realize the calls are coming from inside the house. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Regis, for that. Thank you, Karen. That was really wonderful, Regis. It's so true about that's the cause of anger. And yeah, we always have to look at ourselves. Dove, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for that, Regis. I just want to add, if I am mad, I have been scammed, and that's my new way of saying that I'm listening to an illusion, and illusions get us. It's like a mirage on the desert. You get there, there's nothing there. Nothing is there. I raised my hand on this idea that there is no will but God's, which is in lesson 74. But today's lesson is lesson 87, which is a review of 74. And I heard, because Prudence was playing it for the very first time, never heard it. There is no will but God's. And then he says in lesson 87, I can become afraid only. And whenever you see the word only, he's telling you, hey, listen. And I never heard it before until now. I can become afraid only when I believe there's another will. Of course. I mean, the only reason to live in fear is that someone out there is going to get me. I don't know if it's my worst enemy. I don't know if it's God. I don't know who it is, but someone out there. No, there's only one will. And then you move to lesson 101, 102, 103. God's will is happiness. Lesson 102, I share God's will for happiness. Lesson 103, love, God being love, is also happiness. You got to laugh at this stuff, really, truly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dove. That's so true. You got to laugh. And I see Karen, and thank you for sharing those lessons. It's beautiful. And it's a process. I love how the workbook takes you through a process. It's really a workbook. Karen, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Dove. Thank you, Regis. And I love what both of you guys said. And I love really focusing right now on what Regis said about truth is true in every situation. And the Course repeats that truth is true numerous times. And he says, truth is true and nothing else is true. And this is that hack that I love that Dove and I were talking about the other day. No exceptions. There's no exceptions. Truth is true and nothing else is true. And he says no exceptions a lot too, which I love. And I love that Regis brought up that, again, that I chose to be angry. Taking responsibility that I chose this. It's so easy to say you made me mad. It's so easy. And this is a practice. And this is what I'm also teaching. I'm demonstrating this to my daughter and my granddaughter. And it's so helpful in my special relationships because my daughter, because I've done it too. I did it with my husband for years, blamed him, thinking it was his fault. And if only, I had so many if onlys, and I noticed she was doing the same thing in her relationship. So I just demonstrated by example, and she started noticing what she was doing and looking at it differently and seeing her part in it. It's so important to look at the part we play in our special relationships. Because if we don't look at the part we play and we don't go within and see that, we will continue to blame and we will continue to believe that it is the other person's fault because it seems that way because that's what we're conditioned to believe ever since we were little. If my mom would have just done this or she would have just said that, or my dad, it starts when we're little kids, and then we continue the process. And so it is an undoing. The Course says that true learning is unlearning. We're unlearning all these old conditioned beliefs that are, it's like removing the blocks to love's presence. Unlearning is removing the blocks to love's presence, and that's what we're doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. It's true. It's undoing. It's removing the blocks. It's lifting that veil, and the sleep of forgetfulness. So, would anyone else? It's a process. Like to talk about this on anger? If not, Karen, would you like me to read the next couple paragraphs?
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Since the ego's plan is to maintain our belief in the projection in order to be free of guilt, it will stop at nothing to reinforce the choice of the guilty party. All manner of evidence, real or imagined, is gathered for this purpose. Our anger, totally justified in our mind, says to the person, quote, "Look at the terrible things you have done to me, how through your own doing I have suffered. Look at your sins and feel guilty, for that is how I am made free of my own," end quote. Chapter 16 in Leviticus gives an almost literal description of the projection of guilt, a procedure which placed the word scapegoat in our vocabulary. On the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, the purification of the children of Israel was to be accomplished through two ritual acts. These are the intercession of the high priest who performed certain ritualistic sacrifices in the sanctuary, followed by the selection of a goat. Aaron, the high priest, must lay his hands on its head and confess all the faults of the sons of Israel, and the goat will bear all their faults away with it into a desert place. And that's in Leviticus 16:21 through 22. The sins of the people have thus been transferred to, meaning projected onto, the goat who is driven away, symbolically acting out the ego's maladaptive method of absolving us from our sins. Would you like me to read the next chapter? It kind of goes in line with this, Karen?
No, I would stop here. Yeah.
Okay, I'll stop here. So, would anyone, especially those who grew up in the Jewish faith because of Yom Kippur, like to talk about this? Maybe Dove or Sharon or Mickey? I see Mickey's hands. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience of going to temple on those days because we didn't participate like that. But I do remember the Day of Atonement, and it's the most solemn day of the year in the Jewish faith, and it's the complete opposite of what atonement means in the Course. You went and you confessed all your sins and you apologized to people who you thought did you wrong or you did wrong too, and everybody, got rid of their guilt on that day for the whole past year. But I remember hearing the first time I ever heard about this poor little goat, I wept. I was like, what do you mean they drove him into the desert to die? I was like, and who knows if he didn't find another community to go be part of. But the whole idea of placing all your sins on this innocent animal, to be driven into the desert to, die because of humans' um, failings always just really pierced my heart. So, yeah, that's my whole experience of this Yom Kippur thing. Or as in my family, it was Yom Kippur. There's a big debate in the Jewish community on how to say that. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say is I really got traumatized for that poor little goat.
Oh, thank you, Mickey, for your sharing and your sharing of Yom Kippur and yeah, the little goat. We used to, my mom and I and my family, we had fainting goats, which are they would kind of pass out if they got startled, and then they would come back again. So, but we used to go every year to the Yom Kippur to eat tarsing. He said it was very auspicious, and we used to study A Course in Miracles during Yom Kippur, and it was a very beautiful time. So thank you for your sharing. And Dev, please go ahead. I see your hand up. Thank you, Mickey.
Okay, hi everybody. Yeah, actually, I was brought up Orthodox, which means that's the level of Judaism where you definitely went on Yom Kippur, and I went every Yom Kippur. And these are some of the thoughts I want to share. It was only 2 years ago, believe it or not, that I actually heard a rabbi. It was on Kol Nidre, which is the night before Yom Kippur, speaking about atonement is something we come to ask for, and I'll get into that in a second. We ask for it, and then God gives it to us because we have, done everything that has been asked, and then God gives it to us. The difference between atonement in the Jewish religion and atonement in the Course of Miracles is atonement is given to you. You don't have to ask for it. It's a gift from God. So there is a distinction between, even though it's clear that atonement is taken from that, as Ken Wapping said, please don't pronounce it at one minute. He says that so many times. So it's atonement. It's obviously taken from that particular thing. Now, as far as the symbols of Aaron, the high priest, the lamb and the goat and this and that. Actually, one of my favorite foods is goat yogurt, and I love goat kefir. Really delicious stuff. So I have a really good thing with goats. Now, as far as the service itself, the way the Jewish religion observes the service and why there is a letting go of anybody in this congregation as a little bit more guilty than somebody else. Like, well, let him stand up and do the prayers because he's such a villain. He's a scammer. He's a this. He's a that. No, everyone, the congregation rises together and goes through all the forgiveness prayers. It must be about, it's Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. And there's got to be like 40, 45, 50 Avinu Malkeinu. Forgive me for killing, forgive me for lying, forgive me for stealing. So everyone together says it. So there's no one standing up and saying, oh yeah, it was me. So there is that equality, which one of my favorite words, equality. Nobody knows who's who. We all ask for forgiveness together. Okay, that's my sharing.
Thank you, Dov. I like where you ended that with, we all ask for forgiveness together. And, Ken always brings up, does it include everyone? So, to always include everyone. So that was really beautiful what you said. And I see Mickey's hand is up. So please, Mickey, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question for Dove. I've heard Ken say that, and I've heard people talk about Ken saying, please don't call it at 1 minute, but I never knew why. Does anybody know why he would say that?
No,
Karen, you know.
no. I'll say no. Go ahead. I'm sorry. No. Karen, did you want to speak?
Yeah, so he says that the at one-ment is our state in heaven. It's at one with our source. It's not atonement, which is the undoing of the guilt. There's a difference. The at one-ment is like a state of mind. It's like that state of heaven being the awareness of perfect oneness. But the atonement is, I guess you could say one's a noun and one's a verb, because atonement is the undoing. That's the difference, and that's the way pretty much Ken explained it. But I wanted to share. I don't know a whole lot. Thank you both for sharing on that, and I like what you both shared. And I know for the Catholic religion, it's similar, I guess, to confession, but confession is not together. It's one-on-one with the priest, and it was very intimidating. So I love the idea of together that Dove was sharing, but I think that's beautiful. I didn't know that. Um, and I also want to say that the course has one paragraph that I know of that says the scapegoat, about the scapegoat, and that's in Beyond the Body. And he says that it is insane to use the body as the scapegoat for guilt, directing its attack and blaming it for what you wished it to do. So this is relevant to what we're talking about here, because this is always reminding me and all of us that it's never about the body. It's always about the decision-making mind. And we use the body as the scapegoat because we think that the body, like he says in lesson 68, because I believe I'm a body, I can believe I could be attacked. And that's why I hold grievances, because I believe I'm a body. But so I just wanted to mention that scapegoat is mentioned one time that I know of in the course. But I just wanted to go to the previous paragraph that Michale read, which is, I think, very also important, because he talks about, since the ego's plan is to maintain our belief in the projection in order to be free of guilt, it will stop at nothing to reinforce the choice of the guilty party. All manner of evidence, and the course talks a lot about that evidence, that proof. And it's like those hungry dogs of fear that we bring back to our master, you know, real or imagined, is gathered for this purpose. Our anger, totally justified in our mind, says to the person, look at the terrible things you have done to me, how through your own doing I have suffered. Look at your sins and feel guilty, for this is how I am made free of my own. And this is continuing what we're talking about here. And, I just want to say that I'm so grateful that I don't feel this way anymore, because I could feel this when I was reading it, how I used to feel this way and how I used to blame the other, quote unquote, there is no other, but the seeming other, for my upset and for whatever I'm feeling. And it's such a freedom to know that in the course, he tells us that in lesson 15 that, I that thoughts or images I have made, and these are images, these are, imaginations. Imagination is the images I think of. Like when I think of imagination, it's real or imagined. Well, it's imagined because I made it up. thoughts are images I have made up in my mind. They are not my real thoughts. It's only my interpretation. So the Course reminds us that it's always our interpretation. It's not a fact. And this is what helps me so much, that I only recognizing that, the reason I'm never upset for the reason I think is because I'm believing thoughts that aren't true. They are not my real thoughts. Only the thoughts I think with God are real. Only the all-inclusive nature of forgiveness is real. And if I'm not including everyone, like Michale mentioned, then it's not forgiveness. And the other place in the Course that it reminds me, where he says, you know, what he says here, look at the terrible things you have done, you have done to me, where he says, behold me, brother, at your hand I die. It's your fault. You did this to me. And this is the turnaround for me, is nobody can do anything to me. This is happening for me. Everything is happening for me, for my awakening, for my opportunity for forgiveness, and to bring the awareness back to my mind, and recognizing, as we said from the beginning, that it's a decision. Everything is a decision. And I'm just so grateful I could just sing a song about it. I'm so happy that I'm recognizing this today. So I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. That was beautiful. Your sharing, and yeah, sing a song about it. We were talking about the song "Don't Give Up on Me." That's a beautiful song. Maybe after the prayer, Lynn could play it. I see Glorian's hand is up, and then Dove. Please go ahead, Glorian.
Good morning, everyone. I love all the sharing here today. And I love what you just shared, Karen, and the whole idea of responsibility, and behold you, brother, at your hand I live, by making that right choice. When you guys were talking about the atonement process, and Ken's saying that, don't call it this, we also practice that same way. Sandy, we would always call it the atonement process, the undoing of fear, being that if we say at one mint, that's already done, but we're here to accomplish the process of the undoing of the error. So that was our perspective on that. And when you guys were talking about Yom Kippur, and the original asking for forgiveness, and I think I've mentioned that we studied a little bit about a lot of the religions. That's just something we did as part of our community. And Yom Kippur, the asking for forgiveness in the Jewish religion, in the atonement process, we are willing to look at our lack of forgiveness, which the willingness is a form of asking. So I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
Beautiful, Glorian. Thank you. Yes, the willingness is a form of asking, and thank you for sharing that. And about Yom Kippur. Dove, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I have several things, and they just keep coming up as everyone shares. One of them is, in the Jewish religion, Yom Kippur is seen as the holiest day of the year, and it starts on Rosh Hashanah, which is 10 days earlier, which is the New Year. So right now we're in the year 5785, which started on Rosh Hashanah back in September, whatever it is. And 10 days later, it ends in Yom Kippur, which is the idea that, okay, we're going to ask for another good year. We're asking that God absolve us of last year's sins, and we all stand together and we ask for the 48 Vinu Malkenu, forgive me for this, forgive me for that. And then it's all clean. And we do pay a little penance during the thing called you cannot eat, you cannot drink, no food, no water. You got to go all the way to sunset. And only if you're there at sunset and they blow the shofar at sunset are you inscribed in the book of life for another good year. I mean, everyone wants to live another good year, right? So there's all these little things to tempt you to obey the laws. Now, Glorian would appreciate this because we listen to the Kabbalah rabbi, And Kabbalists, and Jesus was a Kabbalist. Basically, he was in a scene. A scene and Kabbalists are the same. They didn't believe in God, in man-made laws. Yom Kippur is a man-made law. I mean, you kind of know that by the goat and the whole thing and all that. Kabbalists are spiritualists who recognize that this is not a thing about form. It's a thing about content, exactly what the Course is saying. And in content, Kabbalists don't consider Yom Kippur the holiest day of the year. They consider the Sabbath, and there are 52 Sabbaths every single year, as this day of rest. A Sabbath is a day of rest. And if you're doing the Course, you know that rest is a very big word. Most people know RAT, rest, accept, and trust. So we aren't resting the body, we're resting our mind. And I kind of turned it into art. Accept, rest, and trust. So the art of life is to accept, rest, and trust. So what am I accepting? I'm accepting God's will for me is perfect happiness. And I'm resting my mind from the fear. Now, I put a few other words up, like the I Ching. Ken has made the he said the only two spiritual things on earth that does not use the word blame, and I'm thinking of Karen, who said, you have to finally let go of the belief in blame. And that's really what the Course is about. Blame, shame, and guilt are all the same. And the ego is just the embodiment of that blame, shame, and guilt. That's all the ego is. But to really let go of it, you have to actually recognize. And Ken says this, and I think any of Ken's quotes are great hacks. Of course, we all know I got 60 quotes from Ken, any one of them, but the one that applies here, and when we heard this earlier, I don't know who shared it. Yeah, I think it was Karen. This is not a course in learning. This is a course in unlearning. So, I think that helps people who think that there's something to learn in the Course. No, the Son of God does not have to learn from A Course in Miracles. Son of God has to remove the blockages to his awareness of love's presence. I mean, the love is always, the Son of God is the presence. So he doesn't have to learn how to be the Son of God. He has to unlearn everything that's not the Son of God. And that's what I wanted to share. Dream roles. Oh, yeah. And I think somebody was talking about no one can do anything to you. Yeah. So Dream Roles, chapter 29, section 4, is the one section that says that. No one can do anything to you except the role that you assign to them. And, that's because we are one mind. It's not that someone out there is different from me. This is a script. This is, like a movie. It's and, we'll use that Keith thing again. It's not that Dorothy fell into a deep sleep and skipping the old brick road. No, Dorothy is the dream figure. Dove is the dream. We're dream figures to the one mind, of God. We never left the one mind of God. Of course, I guess they want me to get off. I'm getting off now. You gotta laugh.
That was wonderful, Dove. Really beautiful sharing. Thank you so much. Karen, please go ahead.
That was great, Dove. How does that come on? That bell come on, Dove? It sounds like you're at a boxing match.
No, it's the New York Stock Exchange.
Oh my God, I love it. So I love that you brought up the true learning, which I like it best in the very last characteristic of God's teachers, which is open-mindedness. It's in the very last paragraph, and he says, it is the function of God's teachers to bring true learning to the world. Properly speaking, it is unlearning that they bring. It is unlearning that they bring. For that is true learning in the world. It is given to the teachers of God to bring the glad tidings of complete forgiveness to the world. Blessed indeed are they, for they are the bringers of salvation. So the salvation is the unlearning, the undoing, the accepting the atonement. And I also love what Dove shared too. It was beautiful. And I learned some things about Yom Kippur that I didn't know. And I really loved also what Glorian shared about what she shared when she said the willingness to look at lack of judgment. I mean, I'm sorry, the willingness to look at lack of unforgiveness, the lack of unforgiveness. So looking at that is forgiveness, the willingness to look without judgment, to look at that. And in the psychotherapy pamphlet, he tells us that guilt is a grim refusal to forgive. So that is the guilt. We're not willing to forgive because we hold on to this guilt. We hold on to the projection. We hold on to the self-hatred. So that willing to look at that unforgiveness is so important that Gloria shared, because that's what the forgiveness is, that willingness to look. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, because you guys are talking about the scapegoat, and Mickey mentioned how it upset her, that the scapegoat was, used as a sacrifice. And it's very interesting to me because in the Bible, there's a lot about sacrificing animals, but the one story that I love that nobody thinks about this as sacrificing animals, I don't think anyway, that I know of, is the madman, the story of the madman, which I think relates to A Course in Miracles so perfectly, because the madman is all of us when we're in the ego mind. And the madman is it's mentioned twice in the Bible. I know it mostly, I think, in Matthew, but I think it's also in Luke. And he talks about the madman who everybody was afraid of him because he was always like out of his mind and, babbling on, and people just were afraid of him because they couldn't understand him. And Jesus healed him. Jesus healed his mind. But what happened was they were demons in his mind that the demons asked, this is the Bible story, the demons asked to leave the madman, that the demons would go into this herd of pigs. So the demons went into this herd of pigs, and this herd of pigs went crazy and ran off a cliff into some water and drowned. So that's like, killing these animals over these demons that they took out of this madman. That I don't think anybody relates that to kind of sacrificing these animals for this madman's demons that went into the pigs. But I know it's all, illusion and make up believe. But the madman is all of us, and Jesus healed the madman. And all the madman was listening to the ego thought system. That's all he was doing. And it's so simple. It's just, again, choosing again. And I'm loving this conversation. So I'm sorry, I think our time is up, and I'm going to turn it back over to Michale.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Dove. Thank you, Gloria, and thank you for your sharing. And yes, the madman is all of us. I love how you brought that up, and that story from the Bible. I know that story well, about the swine, the pigs jumping off the cliff, and that's similar kind of to what Aaron the high priest did on laying his hands on during Yom Kippur, what Ken talked about. So I do think this is a good place to end this week. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read Helen Schuckman's poem from The Gifts of God. It's on page 24, and it's called Anger is Done. So I think it goes really well with this on special hate relationship. Anger is done. Forever there will be no more attack. No one will cry in pain. No one will grieve, nor thorns be placed again around the holy head of God's own Son, safe in the stillness of reality, where time has disappeared and space has gone. Open your eyes, you holy Son of God. You came to look on this. Anger is done. Dr. Helen Schuckman, The Gifts of God, page 24. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys, so much. And what a beautiful session. I'm going to go ahead and close this out here in just in a second. A question I have always had about that story of the madman and the swine was at that time were Jews allowed to eat pork? Why did they have swine if they did not eat pork? That's just a question I have. And I've always wondered about that, why they had them. But yeah, I see Dove looking, yeah.
Where does wine come from the Jewish history? I don't know.
It's the story that Jesus tells about the madman.
Oh,
Or that
okay. Yeah,
he,
but that itself is not in Jewish history. In other words, what Jesus says is not part of Jewish history, though.
what about the prodigal son who went and lived with the swine or
I,
ate
I
pigs?
know, but that's part of the story of Jesus. Uh,
No, well, I suppose it is, but he was telling,
yeah,
well, I don't know. Ozzy's saying they were wild, but I
you're
think
right.
being
I don't
kept.
know. The answer is I don't know.
I don't know either. It always confused me. That's all I got to say. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and I'll be turning the mic over to, and Carrie saying they sold them. That's possible, but probably maybe the Romans ate them. That's, maybe they just kept them for the Romans. Who knows?
I'll use a Jewish word to describe how Jews see swine. They use the word treif, and treif means untouchable. Don't touch it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's helpful, but maybe that's why Jesus used the word swine, meaning it's it's not for you. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
After all, the prodigal son finally was sitting was in pig pens. He was in hell. It's not for you.
Right. Yeah. But
Yeah,
who's were they? Obviously.
you don't want to go to eat with the swine. It's not for you. God doesn't want you to eat in pig pens.
I know, but why did they even have pig pens if they didn't eat swine? That's my question.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Did they just keep them for pets? I don't know. Carrie, if you want,
No, I don't think they kept them for pets. I really don't.
well, it's just weird that he would tell that story, or those stories would be there because they were all Jews. Anyway, Carrie, Mickey and Gloria both have their hands up. So if you don't mind if they take a couple minutes, I will. Yeah, he says okay. So Mickey, go ahead.
So, oh God, I just lost my thought. I like what somebody else said about maybe they were there. There were other people besides Jewish people on in the world, so maybe
Gentiles, yeah.
yeah, pagans, Gentiles, whatever. And the other, so maybe it was just to sell them. Maybe it was just like wheat or rice. We're gonna do this crop and sell it. And the other idea that came to me was that because Jesus was Jewish, maybe he used the swine going crazy and jumping off the cliff so as not to display waste, or like the heartache that I had about the goat, like here's this thing that's trafe, that's unclean and untouchable, and we're going to put the demons in them and let them run off the cliff because we don't really care about them anyway. And like we're not going to really disturb anybody by telling this story about swine instead of something that we think is valuable.
Makes
That's just what occurred to me. I have absolutely no idea what the real reason is, but that's what came up.
Thank you, Mickey. Gloria, please go ahead.
Yeah, I like that, what Mickey shared there. For me, it was coming to me that it's symbolic. So the trafe, if we look at that, not from your spiritual household, and what Mickey said about there are other people like pagans. So, eating with the swine could be that symbolic for, like Joel would say, cast your pearls before swine, before the unprepared thought. So people not of your own spiritual household. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually from the Bible, cast not your pearls before swine. So that's from Jesus also. So there's a lot of swine talk in Jesus land. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Thanks, you guys, so very
Yeah, I want to say one other thing. I don't know, my hand.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Duff.
Yeah, actually, Jesus spoke in parables, and I was going to say that all of Jesus' parables are hacks, because Jesus knew that the people could not see where he was seeing, so he spoke in parables so they could understand. Like my favorite parable is the vineyard keeper, and I can't think of her name, but she's a Christian teacher. She says the one parable that most Christians cannot understand is the vineyard keeper, which is he sees everybody equally, and Christians cannot see that because they actually think people should be paid according to the time that they put in. And so, all right, so he spoke in parables. So the prodigal son is a parable, and trafe or swine is another way of saying don't go there. In other words, so he uses words like swine, you know, go in the opposite direction. Don't go there. That's insanity. That's insanity. I mean, that's where the prodigal son wound up after he took all of his father's treasures and spent them all, and he was in hell. Don't go there.
And Ozzy says, it's like, bruh. All right. I love you guys. Thank you so much, everybody. An interesting conversation. And I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Thank you all so much.
So we'll go in pal talk for Kerry.
Yeah.